Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you love digging into the how and the why behind massive cultural shifts, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking NYC graffiti's bold urban evolution. We are going to trace this incredibly wild journey from illegal, underground vandalism all the way to world-renowned, officially sanctioned masterpieces. Let's get right into it.
To really understand this story, we've got to start at the absolute peak of the tension. Former New York City Mayor Ed Koch once stated, "If I had my way, I wouldn't put in dogs, but wolves." Just let that sink in for a second. Wolves against teenagers with spray paint. That was the level of bitter, aggressive conflict happening back in the early 1980s. City officials were just completely overwhelmed by street artists, and they were literally willing to use razor wire, guard dogs, and, hey, maybe even actual wolves to stop them from painting the trains.
Which brings us to the central giant irony of this entire explainer. How exactly did the New York City subway system go from a heavily guarded, fiercely contested battleground to, quite literally, a world-class decentralized art museum? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back to where it all began and trace the chronological arc of this totally unique urban phenomenon.
Part 1. Birth of the movement. From the streets to the stations. So back in the late 1960s and early 70s, the modern graffiti movement was just taking its very first breaths. Early pioneers like Techie183, who was actually a bicycle messenger tagging his name everywhere he went, completely changed the game. Think about it. Before this, art was something you had to go to a traditional, stuffy institution to see. But these working-class youths from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens, they realized the subway was basically a circulatory system for the whole city. By painting the trains, their names could travel through every single borough. They were getting massive exposure and bypassing the traditional art gallery gatekeepers entirely.
And that brings us to a really crucial concept you need to know, which is getting up. This was the core motivation of the whole graffiti subculture. It wasn't just about the act of painting. It was this intense, burning drive to have your name seen by as many people as humanly possible, citywide. This relentless psychological desire for recognition, that's what fueled a massive explosion of murals that eventually covered entire train cars.
Part 2. The Subway Canvas, the Golden Age of Transit Art.
During this time, the art form was evolving at just a breakneck pace. The sheer scale of it was staggering. On one hand, you had your tags, right? Quick, simple signatures done with a marker or a spray can, meant for super fast execution. But that intense competition to get up pushed artists to create what were known as murals or masterpieces. We're talking massive, incredibly complex, pop art-inspired works that sometimes covered a whole car from top to bottom. They took serious planning, specialized spray caps for different textures, and hours of covert work in the dark train yards.
But the city definitely wasn't going to just let this happen. As authorities started really pushing back, the writers started using this specific tag, art versus transit. It was a way to demonstrate their resilience. Imagine being a daily commuter back then and seeing that massive, bold declaration roll right into your station. It was such a direct, defiant message. The artists truly saw their work as a homegrown cultural vanguard, a totally legitimate form of expression.
Part 3. The War on Graffiti, the City Fights Back. For city officials and a big chunk of the public, this wasn't art. It was vandalism. The authorities mobilized really rapidly. Mayor John Lindsay declared the very first official war on graffiti way back in 1971. But the real turning point? That was the New York City Transit Authority's Clean Car program, which they initiated in 1984. And just 5 years later, in 1989, the MTA successfully removed the absolute last graffiti-covered train from service.
Now you might be wondering, why did the Clean Car program work when everything else failed? Well, the policy was simple, but it was absolutely devastating to the artists. If a clean car was tagged, it was either cleaned within 2 hours or pulled from service completely. This strategy didn't just clean the trains, it weaponized the artist's own motivation against them. Because the graffiti was never actually seen by the public, it totally destroyed that psychological reward of getting up. So by 1989, the authorities had decisively won the war on the transit lines. It took a massive combination of increased surveillance, razor wire, guard dogs, and that relentless, immediate cleaning policy. But it finally broke the back of the casual subway graffiti subculture. Just like that, the canvas was gone.
Part 4. Transition to galleries, moving above ground.
The thing is, the art form didn't die. It was just forced to evolve and find entirely new venues. This institutional crackdown inadvertently pushed street art right into the mainstream art world, sparking some truly groundbreaking exhibitions in the early 1980s.
You had the Times Square show in 1980, the Fun Gallery opened by Patty Astor, the New York/New Wave show at PS1, and Fashion Moda up in the South Bronx. These spaces built a vital bridge. They invited graffiti writers to paint on actual canvas, bringing the illegal art of the streets straight into the traditional downtown gallery world.
And from those exhibitions emerged some absolute icons. We're talking household names like Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat, working right alongside graffiti pioneers like Lee Quinones and Fab Five Freddy. These rising stars proved that this style of art could achieve massive commercial success and mainstream cultural validation. They captured the raw energy of the subways and translated it perfectly for the global art market.
Part 5. Today's Underground Museum, the MTA Arts and Design Era.
Which brings us to the grand, incredible irony of this entire story. The very same transit authority that waged a brutal, decades-long war against street artists is now one of its biggest curators. Today, the NYC subway system hosts an extensive, permanent, and entirely sanctioned public art collection. Instead of fighting artists tooth and nail, the MTA now actively commissions world-class talent to permanently decorate the stations. It is a complete 180-degree shift in how the city views art in its transit spaces.
And they definitely aren't just hiring anyone. They're bringing in global icons. You can literally walk through the stations and see Yoko Ono's beautiful sky mosaics at 72nd Street. Down at the new Grand Central Madison Terminal, there's a sprawling 120-foot-long glass mosaic by Yayoi Kusama. Over at Bryant Park, you'll find Nick Cave's famous vibrant sound suits recreated in mosaic form. The sheer scale and the prestige of the MTA's current artistic vision is just staggering.
And this officially sanctioned art spans the whole city, borough by borough. You've got Catherine Bradford's superheroes in Manhattan, Romare Bearden's glowing glass cityscape up in the Bronx, and Marcel Zama's whimsical storybook circus over in Brooklyn. That transient, easily washed-away spray paints of the 1970s? It's been officially replaced by permanent, brilliantly illuminated glass and ceramic tile.
As one of our sources perfectly points out, you don't need to visit a gallery or museum to experience the works of well-known artists. By embracing public art like this, the modern subway has essentially become a free, decentralized art museum for millions of everyday commuters. So in a weird way, the original goal of the graffiti writers, bringing art directly to the people, has actually been realized. It's just happening in a highly institutionalized way. And that leaves us with one final, deeply provocative question to think about today. Does institutionalizing street art preserve its spirit, or does it tame it? We've watched this art form journey from rebellious, illegal vandalism born out of this intense need to be seen, all the way to beautiful, sanctioned masterpieces curated by the city itself. It's a fascinating evolution, and honestly, it completely changes how we look at our daily commute. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today. And hey, I highly recommend looking up Ahame Olenaxo the next time you step onto a subway platform.